back to the Scarlet Faithful podcast. I'm Aaron Brightman. Happy Monday. Rutgers football recruiting is rolling. I have a pod out from Sunday night after the flip of DJ McClary and what it means for the class and how they're chasing history, and also what it means just for the big picture of the program. Today's episode is going to focus on Rutgers men's basketball. As always, this episode is brought to you by Knights of the Raritan, the Rutgers NIL Collective. Knights of the Raritan provides a unique way for Rutgers athletic programs to be successful in the ever-changing NIL environment. Become a member of Knights of the Raritan for a chance to win giveaways, unique experiences, exclusive event invites, and more. Subscribe to the free newsletter. Link is going to be in the description of this podcast episode on any platform you are either listening or watching it on. And become a member today to help Rutgers student athletes with NIL. Let's talk about Rutgers men's basketball. Over a week now into summer workouts, week 2 of a 8-week summer workout program. Some legitimate coverage last week. Thursday, Jerry Carino, Brian Fonseca covering the summer workout practice. And then on Friday, you saw the recruiting services, Scarlet Nation, and the night report. So obviously it's a positive time right now. It's plenty of optimism for sure. We all know how the expectations and excitement level is only going to grow from here on out for this 2024-2025 version of Rutgers men's basketball. And we're all hoping that special season is ahead. But wanted to take this opportunity to just comment on a couple observations I picked up on, and also just some thoughts I have. And honestly, this is like therapy for me, and I hope it is for you. But like, I can't go a few days without talking about Rutgers men's basketball. And honestly, that's just not where this program is going into this year, but it's just a feeling of where this program has been for a while now. And I think where it's headed, and it's not just for this next season. Had Steve Pikiell on more than 2 weeks ago at this point, and just in terms of talking to him over the years, and I sense a change in philosophy, and it's not just for this year. I think you're seeing him evolve as a basketball coach. Obviously, with NIL, that has been obvious in terms of his efforts and the way the program has embraced it. Being creative, working with Knights of the Raritan, but which he talked about in my interview with him, but also in terms of just really trying to provide as many NIL opportunities for their student athletes. But also, now I think you're seeing a shift in the approach on the court. And wanted to harp on that in terms of offensive philosophy, defensive philosophy, in terms of what this new roster means. Pikiell's talked about, 1-year teams now is going to be the norm in college basketball, transfer portal, all that. So just in terms of some things that were commented on or reported on by various Rutgers beat writers, the one thing that jumped out to me out of everything was something that Richie Schneiderite said. I saw him write it. I know he had a podcast with Mike Broadbent. Night Report does a great job on their pods, football and basketball. But something that Richie had written was talking about the tempo and the pace of Rutgers has taken a jump in terms of what he saw in practice. And for me, that is something I think is extremely important and a great observation by Richie, but also something that is really necessary for this program, for this team to take the next step. And you saw Pikiell embrace the change last year, wanting to be a more up-tempo team. And unfortunately, just didn't have the horses. Either didn't have the talent, which was part of it. Also, health issues were a major part of it. And, the puzzle pieces, it was like trying to make it work in a way that it just didn't. And the offensive talent wasn't there. And I think that's what's so exciting about this group is on paper, it feels like there is the potential for this team to be the best offensive team in the Pikiell era, but also a very, very good offensive team. Obviously, being the best Pikiell offensive team, no disrespect to any of the teams before, but they have not been an offensive first program since Pikiell's been here. It's all been defense. Obviously, they've had some tremendous playmakers, some clutch players. Geo Baker, Ron Harper have been legends, but they were also playing in a style that was slow down, rock fight, 50s, 60s, the famous speed limit, keep teams under 65. And Rutgers has tried to do that in the last couple of years, and offensively, they just weren't able to keep up. So, where I think that, and I've talked about this before, when you watch, like last season, if you watch the Big 12, and then you watch the Big Ten and you even watch Rutgers, right? It was almost not the same game in terms of the same sport, in terms of the same level, because the Big 12 is so ridiculously athletic, up and down, relentless pace. And UConn plays that way. All the top 10 teams, or all the top teams. You saw Illinois play that way, and Rutgers could not stand up at all on the court against Illinois last year. Went to the Elite Eight. I've mentioned in a previous podcast recently, I look in at the makeup of Rutgers basketball for next season. I see some similarities. Not exactly, not a perfect comp, but some similarities to that Illinois team last year. And a lot of it has to do with pace, but it also has to do with the versatility and athleticism, the size. I think you're going to see Rutgers run in transition quite a bit, spacing the floor, 5 out, not going through the post, not having a traditional big that is required to have 10 to 15 touches around the block in a game. You're looking to really space it out, create driving lanes for your guards, and also be able to stretch the floor with fours and fives that can shoot the ball. Does Rutgers have the five that can do that? Obviously, Zach Martini showing promise to be able to do that. I thought all reports were really positive on him just from his leadership, but he sounds to be in tremendous shape. Some of the clips you saw, listen, Pikiell didn't make any bones about it. In my interview with him, he's going to play the five between Agbole, who Pikiell's praising left and right. They gave an end of the week practice belt. Now they're starting a tradition for the summer to Agbole for his efforts last week. They were talking about work, win, each other. That's kind of their motto for this team. I love it. And obviously, Bole needs to be a contributor next season. We'll see how much. And then Lathan Somerville, the freshman. Obviously, all the freshmen are going through some learning curve right now in terms of physical fitness, in terms of the weight room, in terms of picking things up. But that's why it's June, and that's the beauty of it. So the five is certainly going to be interesting to see how that's rotated. But offensively, you're going to see Rutgers really space the floor better. And you need shooters for that. And I think they have that in Martini and Hayes. I think they're going to have, I think multiple ball handlers is really key for this team. Guard play in college basketball is so important. And it's great to see Pikiell embracing that and building a team that I think can create a lot of problems for opposing defenses, just in terms of their unpredictability, in terms of versatility, in terms of having multiple offensive weapons on the floor, having guys that can beat you in multiple ways, in terms of multiple ball handlers with Dylan Harper, Jeremiah Williams, either can, interact with the ball or off the ball, really are kind of two big point guards out there for you, 6'5", 6'6". Jay Will looks, beefed up for sure. Had him on the pod a couple months ago. He was just super positive. I think him staying is such a huge storyline in terms of his career, what he's been through, what he meant to this team and this program in that last month plus that he was on the court last season. Now getting that rust off, having, farther removed from that injury, saw what he could do at times during that 4-game winning streak was obviously a huge high moment of the season. But now he's going to be surrounded by better talent. It sounds like he's embracing the moment. It's his last year. It sounds like he's embracing the moment, embracing the talent around him, and is stepping up as a leader along with Martini. But what he means for Rutgers on the court with Harper, it's two guys that are very capable in terms of getting to the rim, getting into the lane, decision making. Jeremiah Williams' footwork offensively is tremendous, and just showed an ability to just create space and create shots for himself, and make some really tough shots. And he's got stones. Dylan Harper's going to have stones. I think Tyson Acuff, honestly, might be a little bit off the wall for some. But I honestly kind of think that Tyson Acuff is as important a player for Rutgers next year as anyone. And that's not to say, of course, Dylan and Ace have to be Dylan and Ace that we think they can be top 5 projected lottery picks and show up on the court consistently next season. You need Jay Will to do his thing. You need solid production out of the 5. You need Martini and Hayes hitting threes. You need a lot of things to happen. However, Tyson Acuff gives you a potential weapon that I think can significantly elevate this team next season. Acuff is a proven scorer at the collegiate level. He's never played, obviously, in a high major program, but he's not going to be asked to be the number 8 scorer in the country this season like he was last year for Eastern Michigan. But what he does bring, the ability to handle the rock, low turnover rate with a very high usage rate. He has shot over 35% two seasons at Duquesne and Eastern Michigan his first season. He has the ability to get to the foul line and convert over 80% free throw shooter. And he also has had the ball in his hands in pressure spots with the shot clock winding down, with the game winding down. He's been in pressure moments. And I've talked about this in terms of his efficiency was not great at Eastern Michigan, but he was the guy on a bad team. And you know what? He's been through a ton of adversity. When you're the guy on a team like that and you're able to be a top 10 scorer in the country when you're probably A, B, and C on the opponent game plan. That speaks volumes in terms of your toughness, in terms of your resourcefulness, to be able to be a good enough player to operate at that high of a level. And at Rutgers, he's not going to be asked to be the top scorer. But with Harper Bailey, Jeremiah Williams, if Acuff can solidify that 4th scoring spot, and whether that's as the 6th man off the bench, whether that's as a starter, kind of the 4th option on the floor, 3rd, 4th option, depending who's there. Of course, he has to embrace his role. There was an interview with him. He's saying all the right things. Obviously, there's that connection with Smoke Williamson, Rutgers' assistant. But if all of these guys can truly buy in, I think Acuff's buy-in over everyone else and his ability to find a role. There's a lot of guys on paper. They make sense. They kind of fit right into a role. I mean, he's right. Makes sense. You need a guy to gun threes. He's a hunter. He's gonna be a 3-point hunter. That's his role, right? You're gonna have Martini, the leader, be able to shoot threes, stretch the floor as a 5, but toughness, a lot of things that he's gonna bring. Acuff is a guy who, if he can be a stabilizing force when the top scoring options are either neutralized or defer, and he can step up, if he can provide that stability as a reliable scoring option, it's going to be a huge thing for Rutgers next season. He's another guy that can provide leadership. He's another guy that I think defensively, statistically, is better than what he had shown. When you have that many offensive responsibilities, your defense is going to suffer to a degree, and you're also not playing in a good defensive, playing for a good defensive team overall. He's going to be asked to play a role on defense as well. If you look at him just in terms of what he physically, whether it's video or pictures, he looks stronger than I thought. I thought he was a little more string beanie than he looks. I think he's pretty solid. He's a 6'4", 6'5" guard. And for Rutgers, I think what he could bring in whatever, part of the lineup or rotation he ends up, I think that Acuff, his ability to seize a role, embrace a role, and create a role that is multifaceted, I think he gives Rutgers a lot of versatility, and I think he can give them a lot in production. And I think he'd be a lot more efficient with less usage next season. Talking about defense, I think what you're seeing in a change of philosophy as well. Obviously, Rutgers does not have a natural rim defender like they've had with Miles Johnson, with Cliff Omori. Seeing how Martini, Egbole, and Somerville are going to evolve. But I think what you're seeing here, and I do think that this is a shift in terms of the future as well. Just in terms of, Pikiell's recruiting so many rangy, lengthy, athletic wings with Bryce Dortch and Dylan Grant, 6'7", 6'8", guys that just be disruptive. obviously Ace Bailey, and then going back to the big guards, and having Durkak, Jordan Durkak from Merrimack, Defensive Player of the Year in the Northeast Conference, played a lot of zone there, but really good hands. Jerry Carino was talking about how active he was on the defensive end, even stopped Ace Bailey at one point. He's a guy that I think defensively is going to be huge for them. But I think this is what Rutgers' plan is for next season, and I could see this being a plan for the long term. I think they're going to try to compensate for a lack of a true rim defender by using his length and athleticism on the perimeter. They're going to look to press. They're going to look to speed up offenses. They're going to look to force mistakes, whether it's being disruptive in passing lanes, in terms of just turnovers, in terms of cutting off driving lanes, forcing ISO offense, forcing shots late in the shot clock, forcing offenses to start higher up in the half court than they want to. I think it's going to be hard to get to the rim for opponents next season. Rutgers is going to have so much length and athleticism on the perimeter, in the press, their ability to trap. Pikiell talked in my interview about having Ace Bailey at the top of the 1-3-1 press. I think there's just so many possibilities in terms of the mixing and matching, which we're going to get to in a minute. But you can't score at the rim if you can't get to the rim. And I think that's going to be Rutgers' defensive strategy. Not that they're going to fall apart at the rim, but Cliff was always kind of like the last line of defense and would alter shots and all that. But I think the size and athleticism of the Rutgers backcourt of the wings is going to force offenses into uncomfortable situations, and it's going to create problems with decision making. I think they're going to force a ton of turnovers, and I think they're going to force a lot of bad shots. And that was one thing. Just going back to the Illinois comp, they were not a great defensive team last year. But one thing they did was they forced really poor shooting percentage from 2-point range. And I think a lot of that had to do with the length of Illinois on the defensive end. And I think that is going to be something that Rutgers is going to use strength. And again, if you give Steve Pikiell athletes and the type of talent that he has now, the way he can scheme defensively, his defensive mind, I think you're going to see a shift in this way, not only with how he built the roster, but I also think, part in terms of the five position. We saw this year how fives are at a premium in the transfer portal market. And Pikiell, still embracing development, trying to get high school recruits in. Somerville, latest example, who could become an elite rim defender. Don't get me wrong there. But he's so talented offensively, and they need him to be a rebounder. But I also think that Rutgers is a program that they're never going to be able to get an elite five, so to speak, from the transfer portal. So, yes, you can get an elite rim defender at the high school level. However, I think the way they are, and even in the 25 class, the way they're recruiting wings and guards, and I think that is also speaking to how they look at things defensively, and how they want to play on the flip side offensively. They want to play at a high tempo. They want to play at a fast pace. They want to run in transition. And obviously, you need to be able to rebound, but you need to be able to force turnovers. But I think that you're looking at, he's talked about positionless basketball. And I think the focus on guards and wings, big guards, big wings, other than Jamichael Davis, no one is below 6'4" on this roster. Between 6'4" and 6'9", pretty much everybody besides Davis and Agbole. So let's talk now about Steve Pikiell's ability to have many different types of lineup combinations, and how I think the roster benefits the reality of the situation, and that it is a one-year team. And Dylan and Ace, their plans are to leave after 1 year and get drafted, right? And you have a lot of players on the Rutgers team that are in their last year of eligibility. You hope that the high school players all stay, because I think they can all be really good. And there's no reason to be concerned now. I'm not saying that. But my point is the benefit of having a one-year team. I've talked about this at length in the past, where I felt like Pikiell kind of being bound to minutes, right? In terms of guys that have been foundational to the program. And even, before that, when it was Gio and Ron and Caleb and Miles or Cliff, I mean, you didn't have a lot of minutes to give, right? It was either those guys were on or they weren't. And now, with the benefit of a one-year team, with the benefit of this new roster, right? You have 5 freshmen, you have 4 transfers, you have 3 returnees, 12 scholarship players. It's a 1-year team. Pikiell really has the flexibility here to maximize his decision making when it comes to lineups and the rotation. He's not going to have, yes, everyone wants minutes, and that is really the key to this is chemistry, right? And chemistry, it's a lot easier to have great chemistry and everyone's saying the right things in June, but in November when the games count for real and there's only so many minutes to give in game action, that's where can you keep this together? Can you keep everyone motivated? Can you keep everyone rowing in the same direction? Can you get enough minutes to find out things you need to find out early on, but also to be able to mesh and build chemistry on the court in a game setting? It's crucial to what this team is going to be. But my point is that Pikiell really doesn't have the type of obligation in terms of guaranteeing minutes, that speaks a little bit to Matt Painter, who I think Pikiell and Painter are very similar. Last week spoke about Kenyon Kitchens, the top recruit that ultimately they parted ways with. And it basically came down to, the top recruit wanting a guaranteed role and Painter like, that's not the way it works. And I'm not going to anoint you into a certain role. And he was pretty open about that with the media. And uh, not saying that's ever been an issue with this current group. It's not with Rutgers. But the point is that everyone's fighting right now for minutes. Right now, competition is high, and that is a good thing for this team, for this program. Pikiell's going to be able to. It's more of a challenge also in terms of do you ride the how do you get the most out of your roster game in and game out? So there is a lot less predictability there, right? Before you'd roll out the ball to Gio, Ron, Caleb, Miles, Jacob Young for a couple of years. You just knew those guys. You were either going to win or lose because of those guys, right? And now with this team, you're really going to have to thread that needle in terms of reading the game, diagnosing, who can help you versus the opposition. Game planning, always Rutgers, the coaching staff does a really good job of, but in-game adjustments, right? And if somebody comes off the bench and they're hot, does he ride them, right, at the expense of someone else? Obviously, Dylan and Ace are going to play over 30 minutes a game. You figure Jay will as well. But listen, maybe they play 30, maybe they play 29, and you work other guys in a little bit more. But, if Jordan Durkak is coming off the bench and is able to shut down a point guard, right? He's able to give you great on-ball defense against point guard. He's going to be on the court more. If Acuff, like I mentioned, if he can make some good big shots, if he can show the ability to get to the line against a certain opponent, he's going to be on the floor. PJ Hayes, if he comes in and knocks a few threes down, he's going to be on the floor. Martinez is going to be on the floor. But I think, depending on certain games, he might not be. And maybe you go with a bully, depending on how he can hang with a big. If you're playing a really big 5 in the Big Ten, maybe Martini gives you a little bit on the 4, a little bit on the 5, but maybe he plays less in those games. Hopefully, you can get enough out of Bole. Maybe Somerville's ready at that point to assert himself. It's all going to depend. But I think a key is, Pikiell's talked about versatility of this team, the athleticism of this team, positionless basketball that this roster gives you an opportunity to play. It's also the fact that, he is going to be free in terms of his decision making, in terms of finding what works in the moment. This team's got to buy in to winning. And when you do that, if you get 5 less minutes than your average, right, but you win the game, that's a sign of a winning team. That's a sign of a winning player. Pikiell, it's his job to get that out of everyone now. And that is a very tough job. It's going to be the most challenging year of his career for sure, no doubt. Again, it's building puzzle pieces, finding the right pieces, making it all work. But it's a really exciting thing. Going back to that first point with what Richie said about tempo, about pace, about really seeing this team. I think when everybody sees them step on the court for the first time in November, you're going to see a marked difference in just how that, is the whole saying about how the team looks walking off the bus, walking on the court. I think you're physically going to see a different program. You're going to see a team that you can look at and say, all right, maybe they have a bad shooting night, right? But just their speed, their quickness, their athleticism, their size, their physicality, their versatility, all of those things, they're going to look the part. Obviously, it's the details, it's meshing, it's the chemistry, it's playing together, playing for each other, all those other things. Obviously, hitting shots, right? I think this team has a chance to be very good at finishing at the rim, at finishing with the foul line. If they can just be competent from three, around that 35% mark I talked about, 75% free throw line. Can they finish 60% at the rim? Can they be 52, 53% from two overall? I think this team can do that. Those things are all super important. But overall, I just think that this team, their ability to take things to another level, everything sounds promising. Again, it's early. We're all bloodthirsty for details. But as much as people are concerned about the five position, if you look at the overall vision of the philosophy, I think, with this team in terms of offensively, defensively, and what it means for the future, because I think that this blueprint is what you're going to see moving forward. And it's all about finding the right mix of talent through the portal, through the high school ranks, and developing guys. Minutes are going to be, the competition level in this team, it's going to drive the success of this team. And that's the beauty of Pikiell having the liberty to really flex minutes based on the situation. And I think that that's just a huge key for this season that maybe not everybody is talking about, at least yet. So thank you so much for listening and watching. Talking about Rutgers hoops. I know you're excited. I'm excited. I love talking about it. I hope I provided some insight that maybe you hadn't thought about previously, and plenty more coverage come through the rest of the summer workouts, as well as leading up to what we all hope is a super special 2024-2025 season for Rutgers men's basketball. I'm Aaron Brightman, and thanks so much for listening and watching the Scarlet Faithful podcast once again.